The Thanksgiving Reckoning: How I Exposed My Daughter's $40,000 Lies. The envelope in my hands felt heavier than it should have. Inside were bank statements, screenshots, and a private investigator's report that would destroy my daughter's life. As I sat at her perfectly set Thanksgiving table, watching her laugh with her children, I wondered if this was what justice was supposed to feel like: cold and final. "Mom, you look wonderful tonight," Susan said, her smile too bright, too practiced. She had no idea what was coming. My name is Margaret, but most people call me Maggie. At 68, I never imagined I'd be the type of woman who hires private investigators to catch her own family in lies. But then again, 6 months ago, I never imagined my daughter would steal nearly $40,000 from me while posting pictures of champagne dinners on Instagram. The beginning of the end. This story begins with death. My husband Harold's sudden heart attack in our rose garden. One moment he was pruning his beloved yellow climbers, the next he was gone, leaving me with 45 years of memories and more money than I'd ever had in my life. The life insurance, the house sale, Harold's pension, it all added up to a comfortable cushion for my golden years. Golden years that my daughter apparently saw as her golden opportunity. "Mom, you can't stay in that big house alone," Susan had said, her voice dripping with concern as she sat at my kitchen table the week after Harold's funeral. "It's not safe." She wasn't wrong about the house being too big. Harold had handled the maintenance, knew which switch controlled what light. But I wasn't helpless, despite what my children seemed to think. Still, they wore me down. Susan and her husband David, with their gentle but persistent campaign of senior living brochures and safety concerns. So I sold our house, the place where Susan took her first steps, where Harold and I slow danced on our 25th anniversary, where we'd built a lifetime of memories. I traded it for a beige apartment that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and came with a monthly rent that made my stomach turn. That's when the requests started. The first lie. The first call came on a Tuesday evening, Susan's voice tight with manufactured stress. "Mom, I hate to ask, but we're having a cash flow problem. David's commission check got delayed." $3,200, just until David's check came through. The payback never happened. Of course, there was always something. David's commission structure changed, Susan's marketing job lost a client, the car needed repairs, Emily needed money for junior activities. By November, I'd given them over $35,000 while living in my beige prison, eating dinner alone every night. The discovery. I discovered the truth by accident. Emily, my 16-year-old granddaughter, had left her Instagram open on my iPad after showing me homecoming photos. I wasn't snooping, just trying to close the app when I saw David's latest post. A picture of him and Susan at some upscale restaurant, champagne glasses raised, beaming smiles. The caption read, "Celebrating another successful quarter. When you work hard, you reward yourself. Blessed, living our best life, fine whining." Fine whining indeed. 2 weeks earlier, Susan had called crying about not being able to afford Emily's college application fees. I scrolled deeper, my coffee growing cold as the truth unfolded in perfectly filtered photographs. Weekend getaways that looked like luxury spa resorts, family dinners at restaurants where entrees cost more than my weekly grocery budget, David's modest car upgrade, a brand new BMW. All funded by checks I'd written while they told me stories about financial hardship. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Harold, how he'd worked double shifts at the plant so we could pay off our house early, how we'd saved every penny for retirement, dreaming of trips we'd never take because he died 6 months after retiring. Building my case. The next morning, I called Susan, kept my voice light and casual. "Hi, honey. How are things going?" "Oh, you know, same struggles. David's commission check is late again, and we're behind on Emily's car insurance." According to Instagram, David had just closed his biggest deal of the quarter. That's terrible, sweetheart. How much do you need this time? Could you manage $800? I know it's a lot, but of course, I'll transfer it this afternoon. But I didn't transfer anything. Instead, I made an appointment with James Patterson, an estate attorney with a reputation for protecting seniors from exactly what was happening to me. Mrs. Wilson, James said after I'd told him everything, what's happening to you is called elder financial abuse. Your daughter and son-in-law are exploiting your love to fund their lifestyle. The words stung because they were true. Over the next hour, James outlined my options: document everything, cut off their access, and potentially pursue legal action. He also suggested something I hadn't considered: a private investigator. People who exploit elderly relatives rarely stop voluntarily, and the holiday season often brings these situations to a head. He was right about that. The final deception. The call came the Monday before Thanksgiving. Susan was crying, real tears this time. Mom, David might lose his job. His position is being eliminated. My heart sank despite everything. Then came the real bombshell. There's something I probably should have told you months ago. When we asked for help with the mortgage, it wasn't temporary. We've been behind for almost a year. We're about to lose the house. 7 months behind. 7 months of missed payments while they took me to expensive restaurants and posted about their blessed lifestyle. How much would it take to catch up? Around $25,000. $25,000 on top of the nearly $40,000 I'd already given them. Mom, the foreclosure notice gives us 2 weeks. That night, I called James Patterson's emergency line. They want $25,000 to save a house they've been lying about for months, I told him. Mrs. Wilson, they've been committing fraud. Thanksgiving reckoning. By Thanksgiving Day, I'd made my decision. The private investigator had provided everything I needed. Every expensive purchase cross-referenced with their social media posts, every lie documented with timestamps and screenshots. I arrived at Susan's house carrying my famous sweet potato souffle and a manila envelope that would change everything. Dinner was a performance. Susan and David steered conversation away from money, discussing Emily's college plans and Ryan's basketball season. All very normal, very pleasant, very fake. After dessert, the show began. Mom, Susan said, exchanging glances with David, we wanted to talk about the house. Of course. If we can bring the mortgage current by Monday, the bank will work with us on a modified payment plan. David leaned forward earnestly. This really is our last chance, Margaret. So you were hoping I'd give you $25,000. Loan, David corrected quickly, with interest. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. Actually, I have something for all of you. Susan looked confused but pleased. Oh, Mom, you didn't need to. Open it. I watched her face as she realized what she was looking at. Bank statements on top, showing every transfer I'd made. What is this? Documentation of every lie you've told me for the past 4 months. The color drained from David's face. Margaret, I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. You took $37,800 from me while claiming financial hardship, then spent my money on vacations, expensive dinners, and golf clubs while your mortgage went unpaid. Mom, you're taking this out of context. Really? What context makes it acceptable to lie to your widowed mother? Emily looked between her parents with growing horror. Is this true? Have you been lying to Grandma? It's complicated, David mumbled. No, it's fraud, and it stops now. That's when Susan played her final card. We've decided to cut you out of this family. The words hung in the air like poison. Emily gasped. Ryan stared at his mother in disbelief. David looked like he wanted to disappear. And I laughed. Not bitterly, but with genuine amusement. After months of manipulation and guilt trips, Susan thought she could threaten me with abandonment to get her money. Well, I said, reaching back into the envelope, you'll definitely want to see the rest of this. I placed a second set of documents on the table. This is a report from the private investigator I hired last week. It documents every expensive purchase you made with my money, cross-referenced with your social media posts. The silence was absolute. I also filed a complaint with the State Attorney General's office for elder financial abuse. That's the third document. Susan frantically flipped through the papers. "You can't do this to us. We're your family." Family doesn't steal from each other, Susan. But since I'm apparently no longer part of this family, I suppose that makes you common criminals instead of ungrateful relatives. David lost it completely. "You vindictive old woman! Do you have any idea what you've done? We'll lose everything." "You already lost everything when you decided to treat me like a mark instead of a mother." Susan tried tears. "Mom, please, if you do this, you'll never see your grandchildren again." I looked at Emily and Ryan, both staring at their parents with shock and disappointment. "Sweetheart," I said to Emily, "you'll be 18 in 2 years. You can decide for yourself whether you want a relationship with a grandmother who refuses to enable your parents' bad behavior." I picked up my purse and coat. The investigator's report includes a recommendation for financial counseling. I'd suggest you take that seriously. At the door, I turned back one final time. "Oh, and Susan, happy Thanksgiving." The aftermath. The phone assault started at 6 the next morning. Susan crying, David alternating between rage and desperate pleading. 17 calls, 43 texts, 2 emails. I responded to none of them. James Patterson called at 2. They want to settle. Full restitution plus an agreement not to pursue criminal charges. In return, they'll agree to have no contact with you. They think no contact with them is something I'd pay to achieve? Apparently. We proceed with the complaint. That evening, my son Michael called from Denver. Finally, the conversation I'd been dreading. "Mom, Susan says you filed some legal complaint?" Elder financial abuse. They took almost $40,000 under false pretenses. "Jesus, Mom, I had no idea." "They've been lying for months, Michael." "That's really screwed up. I'm sorry. I'm not angry with you for protecting yourself." "You're not?" "I'm proud of you. Patricia and I want you to come for Christmas. Stay as long as you want." The settlement conference was brutal. Susan and David arrived looking terrible. Weight loss, worry lines, the appearance of people who hadn't been sleeping. Their lawyer tried the aggressive approach first, then shifted to emotional manipulation. "Surely you don't want to see your daughter go to jail. Think about your grandchildren." I'd had enough. For 4 months, I've been told to think about my grandchildren every time I question financial requests. I've thought about them, and I've decided they deserve better parents. I offered an alternative: full restitution, written apology, 6 months of financial counseling, no jail time. "And our relationship?" Susan asked hopefully. "No, Susan, that ship sailed yesterday. This is purely business now." They took the deal. Turned out David's commission delays had been caused by gambling losses, sports betting addiction that had spiraled out of control. The expensive purchases hadn't been celebrations, but desperate attempts to maintain appearances while their world collapsed. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my new apartment in Denver, 3 blocks from Michael's house. The Rocky Mountains fill my living room window instead of a parking lot. My dining set finally has a proper home instead of gathering dust in Susan's basement. The payments come monthly, $800 that will take them just over 4 years to complete. They lost the house anyway. The $25,000 I refused to give them wouldn't have been enough to save it. Emily wrote me last month, and she'd been accepted to 3 colleges with partial scholarships. She thanked me for refusing to enable her parents and said that she was learning to appreciate earning things instead of having them handed to her. Susan sends updates through Michael occasionally. They're both working now, living within their means, slowly rebuilding. Some bridges can be repaired. Others can only be replaced with something completely new. Harold used to say the hardest part of parenting wasn't knowing when to catch your children when they fell, but knowing when to let them hit the ground so they'd learn to be more careful.
It took me 68 years to understand what he meant. I'm living the retirement Harold and I dreamed of, traveling when I want, spoiling my grandchildren responsibly, making my own choices about how to spend my money and my time. I still miss Harold every day, but I no longer feel guilty about being happy without him. And I never, ever feel guilty about protecting myself from people who would take advantage of my love, even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family.